The darkest things live in the light. My grandmother used to say that. Her invented idioms always seemed to carry greater weight upon reflection. Grandma was just philosophising about the monstrosity of mankind, but it so happened that her words rang truer than she could have ever known. It was November 2022. For a year, I'd been living in Tokyo with the love of my life, a wonderful man named Akio. It wasn't easy for a 20-something-year-old girl from Blackpool to adjust to life in a new country, but Akio is the kind of person who makes everything seem possible. I know I was anxious when I first moved to Japan, but trust me, my sister's anxiety is so much worse. She's going to be twice as insufferable, I told him. A fair warning about our brother, though, he's an acquired taste. I gathered that from video calls in lockdown. Akio chuckled. I shook my head. That was Sam on his best behaviour. I have a horrible feeling that you'll see him at his worst when he comes to stay. He used to scare away my boyfriends when we were younger. Well, you're not kids anymore, Akio said, shrugging. Besides, it won't be any worse than the interrogation from your parents during their visit, will it? I smiled and planted a kiss on his cheek. I love your boundless optimism, Akio. My younger sister and older brother arrived at a late hour. Terrible flight, Sam grumbled, storming through the front door of Akio's high-rise flat. He only moaned about it for 15 hours, Millie yawned, rubbing her squeaky eyeballs with the back of her hands. You're here now, I said, embracing my sister. It means a lot that you endured, Sam. My siblings strolled over to the floor-to-ceiling windows in the lounge. There was a mesmerising view of the capital's futuristic skyline. The dazzling lights of Tokyo formed a starry canvas against the backdrop of a desperately dark night. Glass-clad man-made mountains towered over us, and my oafish brother could only think to ask one thing. Which floor is this, Akio? I thought you were living higher in the building. I groaned, but Akio simply grinned at me and brushed off my brother's prodding remark. The 22nd floor, Akio replied. You must both be too tired to do anything tonight, I assume. After travelling so far? No way. Let's see the city, Sam exuberantly requested. My sister was far too exhausted for that, but she, like me, seemed surprised to see our brother so animated. We exchanged a look, and I could tell that neither of us wanted to squander the opportunity to quash his surliness. Millie nodded her head, and Akio excitedly donned his favourite jacket. Brilliant! I want to take you to my favourite shop in the city, my boyfriend said. Mukashi. Akio took us to the shop that I had visited with him on so many occasions. It operated out of a house belonging to an elderly lady named Mai. She was no entrepreneur. You couldn't even find her place of business online. It was a secret store, known only to family and friends. I forget how Akio met her. Mai greeted us at 10 o'clock in the evening and led us into her home. Does she ever sleep? I wondered. What is this place? Sam asked. Mukashi, Mai answered. It means long ago. There are all sorts of weird and wonderful things in here, Akio said. Things of immense power, Mai qualified. Who's this creepy guy? Sam asked. He was pointing at a painting on the wall, a horrifying piece of art that I would skillfully swerve whenever Akio took me into my shop. It depicted a gangly nude man. From his head to his toes, he was composed of shrunken, contorted, screaming people, reminiscent of those canvases that artists build from hundreds of miniature photographs. A nightmarish version of that. He wore a crown on his head, a crown forged of human hearts. The blood of the organised organs trickled down the man's horrible head, drowning some of the miniature people that formed his face. And this ruler of a dark and demented realm sat on a throne of bones. Many cultures have mentioned his name in hushed whispers, Mai explained. The entity is known in Japanese circles as Daikingu. The Day King. It's horrible, and incredible. Millie shuddered. I nodded in agreement with my anxious sister. It was beautiful, but it was also unspeakably sinister. Neither Millie nor I were fans of the macabre. I suppose the same could be said of our brother, but unlike us, he neither feared nor revered the artwork. Why is it so poorly lit? Sam asked. You made a valid point. Everything else in the shop basked in the warm, homely glow of Mai's pleasant abode, but the painting lurked in the darkness. Still, I'd never complained about that. I was happy for it to be hidden. I didn't want to know what dire details the light might reveal. He cannot live in the dark. He draws power from the light, Mai explained. Anyway, I'm sorry, but it isn't for sale. I only keep it there for protection. Akio, I have some very exciting new antiques in stock. Would you like to take a look? Akio enthusiastically nodded, and he followed the old lady to the other side of the room. Meanwhile, Sam eagerly eyed the painting, refusing to move along. Come on, Millie urged. I can't squeeze past you in this cramped room. Keep moving. I just want to get a better look at it, Sam chuckled. I left my phone back at the apartment. Have you got yours, Heidi? I begrudgingly handed my phone over to him, and I could sense my sister clenching her body nervously. Everything happened so quickly. I should have kept the phone to myself. The flash of the camera filled up Mai's claustrophobic room. What was that? The old lady screeched, running towards us. Relax, Sam replied. Mai proceeded to brutally berate Sam in Japanese. I've no idea what she said, but judging by the pale look on Akio's face, it mustn't have been pleasant in the slightest. Who is this fool, Akio? Mai asked in English. Akio began. I'm so sorry, Mai, I interrupted tearily. He's my rude brother. Have you no respect, young man? The woman cried. At that moment I realised Mai wasn't angry, as I had initially presumed. She was frightened. Don't worry, Sam insisted. I'm not going to leak your painting online. The picture didn't even come out properly anyway. My brother showed the four of us his photograph. The camera flash had illuminated the frame. Yet, horrifically, Deikingu was nowhere to be seen. Sam was showing us a photo of a blank canvas. I looked at the actual painting and then breathed a sigh of relief to see that the dreadful Deiking was still sitting on his throne of bones. You have released it, Mai croakily cried. May the darkness save you. Okay. Look, I'm sorry for upsetting you, but there's no need to say a strange thing like that, Sam said, scowling. We'll leave now, Mai, Akio said, herding us out of the shop. I'm so sorry. You have a lovely home, Millie meekly added before we left the store. I scolded my older brother for the duration of the walk home. When we reached the Kyo's apartment building, Sam pulled me to one side. I'm sorry, Heidi, he said. I didn't come all this way to upset you. I was excited to meet Akio, and I wanted to come to Japan. I wanted to see a new life. We really miss you back home, you know. You have a funny way of showing it, I huffed. How will I ever show my face in my shop again? Look, Sam trailed off. His eyes glazed over, transfixed by something behind me. I twisted my head, but there was nothing on the other side of the road. Nothing but a garish neon sign above a restaurant. What? I asked. Nothing, Sam said, shaking his head and returning his gaze to me. Come on, let's buzz Akio to let us inside. I have to apologise to him, don't I? I probably seem like a grumpy man. Well, that'd be an accurate impression, I replied, rolling my eyes. When we entered the flat, Sam adopted a demeanour that was much more relaxed, and that meant Millie and I could relax too. No more conducting damage control for our foot-in-mouth sibling. "Oh, I'm ready to hit the hay," Millie yawned. "You guys have only had to tolerate Sam for a few hours. It's been a whole day for me." I chuckled. "Well, the spare bed's made up for you, Millie. Sam, it's the sofa for you." "That's what a dog deserves, I understand," Sam teased, sparking a round of laughter that seemed to diffuse the earlier tension of the evening. After we had all prepared ourselves for bed, I found myself reflecting on Sam's apology. My brother had always been a throbbing splinter beneath my skin, but he was still family. "I'm just going to go and clear the air with him," I said to Akio. "I won't be able to sleep until I do." "Of course. Also, Heidi," Akio started. I turned to face my smiling partner, who was tucked tightly beneath the duvet. "Yeah?" I asked. "Still not as painful as your parents' visit," he chortled. I threw a nearby pair of socks at him, and I strolled down the corridor to the lounge. I realised Sam was still awake, as the wall of the hallway was basking in a warm orange glow from the living room. I rounded the corner and found my brother on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. "Hey," I said. "I just want you to know that I'm really happy to see you. I missed you and Millie too." Sam smiled. "At least I'm not as bad as Mum and Dad, right? I've not begged you to come back to England yet." I grinned. "That's a low bar, but you're not wrong. Night, Sam." Wait, how do you turn off this lamp, by the way? The cord's really fiddly. I had been strolling out of the room, but I turned around to face Sam and answer his question. And that was when I screamed. Behind the sofa, hovering above my brother, was a tall man. I immediately realised it was the horrendous figure from the painting in my shop. He appeared far worse in the flesh. His body was composed of tiny humans who writhed and wriggled in agony. They were mutilated beyond recognition. What remained of their faces seemed to ceaselessly morph, as if the creature were built of so many victims that it could not reveal all of them at once. Sam had already been pulling the cord as I started to scream, and he figured out how to turn off the lamp on his own. We sat in the darkness for a split second, but he rapidly turned the lamp back on. "What?" he cried. "Why did you scream? What's wrong?" Deikingu had vanished. The darkness had extinguished it. "Turn the light back off," I coldly commanded. Sam's eyes widened. We shared a knowing look, and I suddenly realised what he had seen beneath the neon sign outside Akio's apartment building. Soundlessly and rapidly, he turned off the lamp, plunging the lounge back into a secure pit of darkness. Millie and Akio emerged from their rooms, but I ushered them back inside and told a white lie about Sam pulling a frightening prank. Everybody went back to bed, and Sam and I said nothing of what we'd seen. When Akio woke, around 7 in the morning, he was startled to see me quivering and eyeing the ceiling with bloodshot pupils. Pulling an all-nighter wasn't exactly my decision, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen in the living room. It was no hallucination. I believed that. I didn't know whether Akio would believe that. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You look rough." "Love you too," I replied. I just couldn't sleep. Akio ate up the lie, but Sam cast jittery glances in my direction throughout breakfast. We had both seen the Day King. Neither of us needed to confirm that aloud. The terrible truth was etched on our fragile faces. Seemingly oblivious to my unsettled disposition, Akio jubilantly assumed the role of tour guide and encouraged us to go on a day out to his favourite park. Millie's enthusiasm overshadowed the solemnness of my brother and me. I was too distracted by my terrible thoughts to feign happiness. Every sound and movement haunted me. A sharp wind was pursuing us. It nipped and nibbled at the nape of my neck. I noticed Sam shivering, but nobody else seemed to react to the weather. It was when I realised it wasn't a gust of wind. It was the sound of human wailing. I turned to face the source of the icy noise. As soon as I did, it stopped. Everything stopped. The people in the park had disappeared. Only Sam and I remained. No, my brother cried. I finally absorbed my surroundings. It was an unusually sunny November afternoon, and shade could only be found beneath the scarce leaves of autumnal cherry trees. In the heart of the empty park, which seemed to have slipped into a splintered moment of reality, was exactly what I had feared I would see. Deikingu. The entity with bubbling skin took purposeful strides through the grassy clearing. Its horrifying flesh glistened in the midday sun. Driven by a primal instinct to survive, I pointed to the cherry trees before I even realised I was doing so. I screeched, "Come on!" The Day-King managed to glide towards us with such effortless speed, but we reached the shade of the cherry trees in time. The horrifying entity stood at the edge of the shaded grass and watched. "Now what?" Sam asked. "How will we ever leave this place?" As I struggled to think of an answer, Sam's eyes suddenly rolled backwards, concealing his pupils. His head lolled to the side, as did that of the Day-King. I cried in helpless horror, and the creature's wailing sound returned. The small bodies of human victims squirmed sickeningly as the Day-King stared deeply into Sam's soul. Then, my brother's eyes returned to normal, and he looked back at me with a soothing smile. "We spoke," Sam said. "The fault is entirely mine." Before I could ask what he meant, I gasped at the sight of my brother strolling towards the hellish being in the sunlight. "What are you doing?" I screamed. My body, whether immobilised by fear or some supernatural force, was unable to reach for Sam. I couldn't restrain him. I could only watch as he serenely entered the sunlight and accepted the Day-King's cold embrace. It was an indescribably horrific spectacle, which I cannot scrub from my memory. Deikingu curled his wriggling arms around Sam and effortlessly enveloped his body. My brother screamed with frightening ferocity. His flesh melted and merged with the bodies of the other eternally tortured victims. He became part of the graveyard that composed the Day-King. Suddenly, the sun blinded me. When the glare subsided, the sound and life of the world returned. Akio and Millie came running over to me. They found me sitting in the grass beneath the shade of the cherry tree. Onlookers were concerned by my cry, but they quickly went about their days. "What's wrong, Heidi?" Akio asked. "We lost you for a second. How did you get all the way over here so quickly?" "Where's Sam?" I breathlessly blubbered. Millie looked around, frowning. Neither she nor Akio had an answer for my question. Sam was never found. And how could I tell anyone that the Day-King had added him to its barbarous collection? This was all confirmed when Maya allowed us back into her shop. Akio still doesn't know what I saw, but Maya knew. I could see it in her eyes. She saw me looking at the painting. She saw me shudder at the sight of Sam's tattooed, limbless torso, which formed the left tip of Deikingu's malicious smile. I think the lady had dimmed the lights since the last time we'd been in her store. After all, the darkest things live in the light.